Hello there, great to see you here. Tonight, we're climbing a mountain that doesn't appear on any map. There are no trails, no signs, no oxygen tanks. But at the top, a palace of clouds, thrones made of gold, and a family so dramatic they make soap operas look well adjusted. Tonight, we're visiting Mount Olympus, or maybe just drifting around its edges, listening in, keeping our heads down. Because the Greek gods, they don't always play fair. Some are kind, some are cruel, most are both, depending on the time of day. So get comfortable, dim the lights, and if you feel like it, let me know where in the world you're listening from and what time it is there. Now, a quick warning. Olympus is not a democracy. There's a king. There's a lot of passive aggression, and no one really retires. Each god has their thing, their domain, their grudge. Some oversee oceans or war. Others handle nightmares, memory, or the rainbow. And a few are just there, existing, watching. Some of them you already know. Others have been quietly working night shifts for the last few thousand years. But whether they're famous or forgotten, each of them shaped how people saw the world for centuries, through storms, victories, illnesses, and dreams. Because the gods weren't just divine, they were personal. You could argue with them, blame them, thank them, fear them. So tonight, we're going to meet them, one by one, not as distant statues, but as personalities, as stories. Some graceful, some petty, a few genuinely helpful, most slightly terrifying. Let's begin, and try not to catch Zeus's attention. Zeus, king of the gods, ruler of the skies, and one-man HR violation. You'll find him on a throne made of storm clouds, tossing lightning bolts with the same energy someone throws socks into a laundry basket. His domain: law, order, thunder, and absolutely zero self-control. He overthrew his father, Kronos, who in fairness was eating his children, and took the throne by force. That set the tone. Olympus was born through drama, and Zeus made sure it stayed that way. He's known for upholding cosmic balance and also for not upholding monogamy. His love life reads like a list of how not to behave in a relationship. Human women, goddesses, nymphs, disguised as a swan. You name it, he's tried it. And his wife noticed. Oh, she noticed. Still, Zeus wasn't all thunder and trouble. He was the final word in most disputes. When gods bickered, which was daily, Zeus got the last say, sometimes by judgment, sometimes by bolt. But behind the lightning and the bravado, he represented something bigger, the force that keeps things from unraveling. Sky, law, kingship, fate. That said, maybe don't make eye contact, and definitely don't flirt with anyone he's dated. Let's meet the woman who had to deal with all of this, and made sure no one forgot it. If Zeus was the sky, Hera was the crown underneath it, polished, unyielding, and extremely good at holding a grudge. She's the goddess of marriage and queen of the gods, but don't confuse that with supportive spouse. Hera's brand of loyalty came with a steel spine and a side of vendetta. She didn't just rule Olympus with Zeus, she ruled with presence. No thunderbolts, no oceans, just cold stares, clever plans, and an uncanny ability to make your life miserable without lifting a divine finger. Did Zeus cheat? Repeatedly. Did Hera blame the other woman? Always. Did the women often have a choice? Not usually. Hera's wrath wasn't always just, but it was always thorough. Leto, Semele, Io, Callisto, each paid a price. Often poetic, always dramatic. But she wasn't just Zeus's wife. Hera protected women in childbirth, oversaw the sanctity of vows, and stood as a symbol of enduring power. She may not have been warm, but she was respected and deeply feared. Think of her as Olympus's unblinking eye. Nothing escaped her, especially not betrayal. And when you wrong her, she doesn't scream, she doesn't chase, she waits. But let's step away from the clouds for a moment and dive into the sea, where another brother rules with waves, tempests, and a seriously salty attitude. If Zeus is a storm above, Poseidon is the storm below, moody, powerful, and never in a good mood. He's the god of the sea, earthquakes, horses, and you looked at me funny, so now there's a tsunami. Poseidon didn't just control the ocean, he was the ocean. Deep, unpredictable, occasionally generous, frequently furious. His trident could split mountains, calm waves, or cause entire islands to vanish. But more often, it was used to smash things when he didn't get his way. Athens didn't choose him as patron god. He flooded their plains. Someone insulted him on the beach. Sea monster time. Poseidon's love life was chaotic too. Like his brothers, he had a long list of affairs, both consensual and not. His children ranged from helpful demigods to literal disasters, the kind of disasters that sink ships. But for all his bluster, sailors still prayed to him. Why? Because the sea is scary, and when you're at its mercy, you beg the god who might sink your boat not to. Still, Poseidon wasn't just rage. He built cities, protected seafarers, brought springs from dry earth. But under it all, there was always that low, distant rumble. Let's come back to land now, and fields, and crops, and one goddess who loved her daughter more than the sun itself. Demeter is the reason spring comes back every year, and the reason winter exists at all. She's the goddess of agriculture, grain, and motherhood. She gave humans the gift of farming, taught them how to grow wheat, and probably reminded them to wash their hands. She was nurturing, patient, until you crossed her. Then, nothing grows. Demeter's most famous story is about loss. Her daughter Persephone was kidnapped by Hades. No warning, no mercy, just vanished into the underworld. Demeter didn't take it well. She stopped everything. No crops, no harvest, just blight, hunger, and silence. The world withered until Zeus finally intervened. The compromise. Persephone could return, part-time. And that's how we got the seasons. Spring and summer belong to Demeter, joyful, fertile. Fall and winter. The months Persephone returns to the underworld. Demeter grieves, and the world feels it. But this wasn't just myth. For ancient Greeks, it was comfort. The cycle of loss and return, grief and growth, a divine explanation for pain and hope. Demeter wasn't dramatic like her siblings, but she was steady. And when she broke, so did the earth. Now, let's follow her daughter to the one god who never chased anyone, never threw bolts, never flooded cities. He just waited. Hades gets a bad rep. He didn't cause death, he managed it. The god of the underworld, he ruled the realm of the dead with quiet authority. No chaos, no judgment, just order and eternity. He wasn't cruel, just final. While his brothers fought over sky and sea, Hades drew the shortest straw, the land below. He made the best of it. His kingdom was vast, full of rivers, judges, and shadows. The dead arrived, stayed, and didn't complain. He rarely left. When he did, like when he abducted Persephone, it caused more than seasonal drama. But even then, it wasn't a typical god napping. He offered her a throne, a crown, a partnership. And in later myths, Persephone became his equal, ruling the underworld at his side. Hades had a helmet of invisibility, a stern gaze, and zero tolerance for nonsense. He wasn't evil, just professional. And if you ever found yourself in his realm, you'd want him in charge. Let's warm up a little now, not with fire, but with something gentler. A hearth, a flame, and one goddess who stepped out of the spotlight by choice. You won't see Hestia in many dramatic myths. That's kind of the point. She's the goddess of the hearth, the literal and symbolic fire that keeps everything warm, safe, and alive. She's home, she's family. She's the reason temples had eternal flames, and every meal began with a silent nod to something sacred. Hestia was the firstborn of Kronos and Rhea, swallowed by her father, and later reborn like her siblings. But while Zeus claimed the sky, Poseidon the sea, and Hades the underworld, Hestia stepped back. She gave up her throne on Olympus. No fight, no scandal. Just a quiet, "I'm good, thanks." She chose peace, neutrality, a role outside the chaos. In return, she became the center of every home. The hearth was her altar. Every fire kindled, every offering made, went through her first. She wasn't flashy, but she was everywhere. And that made her powerful. Hestia didn't chase lovers, start wars, or hurl curses. She didn't need to. She was the still point, the goddess you turned to not in battle, but in survival. When the storm passed, and you needed warmth, she was simplicity, stability, the one god who never made anyone's life worse. But let's leave the warmth of the hearth now, and step into sharper territory, where wisdom carries a spear, and mercy is optional. Athena was born fully grown, fully armed, and already smarter than everyone else in the room. That's not a metaphor. She literally sprang from Zeus's skull, armored and ready to argue. Goddess of wisdom, war strategy, crafts and cities, Athena was the ultimate multitasker. She guided heroes like Odysseus, invented the chariot, and once turned a girl into a spider for beating her in embroidery. She didn't lose well. She wasn't about bloodshed like Ares. Her battles were chess games. Every war, every move calculated. That's why the Greeks loved her. She represented victory through brains, not brute force. Athena was also famously unmarried. Virgin goddess, yes, but that meant uncompromising. She didn't bow, she didn't beg, and if you crossed her, she'd turn you into an owl, a statue, or a cautionary tale. She was patron of Athens, a city that chose her over Poseidon. He offered salt water, she offered the olive tree. Practicality won. She was justice, sometimes cold, always sharp. If Hera was the queen, Athena was the advisor you didn't dare interrupt. And she never shouted. She didn't need to. Let's head now to someone who definitely did shout, and sing, and prophesy, and smite, often on the same day. Apollo had many titles: god of music, poetry, prophecy, healing, plague, sunlight, and being emotionally exhausting. He was golden, talented, and deeply dramatic. Worshipped at Delphi, he was the voice behind the oracle, a god who spoke in riddles and made sure no one ever fully relaxed. His prophecies were never wrong, just deeply inconvenient. Apollo could charm you with a lyre and then turn you into a laurel tree if you said no to a date. He once cursed Cassandra to see the future but never be believed, because she rejected him. Apollo had many gifts. Grace wasn't one of them. He also brought healing, but only after unleashing disease. Duality was his thing, light and shadow, harmony and wrath. He was the twin of Artemis, and together they covered all terrain, day and night, Forest and city, touch and distance. Apollo had range, but his temper, thin as a reed flute. Let's now meet the other half of that divine duo, quieter, deadlier, and 100% not interested in being your girlfriend. Artemis ruled the wild places. She was goddess of the moon, the hunt, the forest, and the space between civilization and chaos. Twin sister to Apollo, but where he was flash, she was silence. She travelled with nymphs, armed with a silver bow, and her one rule was this: leave me alone. Artemis was a protector of women, especially young girls, and a fierce guardian of her independence. Stories that involved men approaching her never ended well. Actaeon saw her bathing. She turned him into a stag, and his own dogs tore him apart. That's Artemis. One glance too far, and you're wildlife. But she wasn't cruel for fun. She represented boundaries, sacred ones. And in a world where gods often crossed lines, Artemis drew them. With arrows, she helped women in childbirth, delivered swift justice, brought calm under moonlight. And if you earned her favor, she was a shield. Just don't flirt, don't brag, don't even step on a twig near her. Let's end this batch with someone who loved chaos. Loud, bloody, glorious. Ares is waiting. Ares was the god of war, but not the smart kind. While Athena strategized, Ares charged. No helmet, no plan, just violence. He was passion, bloodlust, fury, the scream in battle, the clash of swords, the reason armor dents. And no one liked him, not even the other gods. He was handsome, yes, and had an ongoing thing with Aphrodite. But socially, a disaster. His siblings found him loud. His father Zeus openly insulted him. Mortals feared him. Even war heroes preferred Athena's guidance. Ares didn't win. He fought. He represented the chaos of conflict, the part no one controlled. That made him dangerous, yes, but also strangely honest. He didn't hide who he was. Still, in most myths, Ares gets humiliated, caught in traps, wounded by mortals, laughed at. He's strength without direction, fire with no aim. And speaking of fire, let's meet someone who actually knows what to do with it. Hephaestus was the god of fire, metalwork, invention, and frankly, the only Olympian who ever clocked in. While the others argued, schemed, and turned mortals into various shrubs, Hephaestus was at the forge, crafting thrones, armor, automatons, and elaborate traps most definitely not up to safety code. Born to Hera alone, Zeus had no part in it. He was either thrown off Olympus for being ugly or disabled, or born that way because he was thrown. Greek myths can't decide. Either way, he crash-landed, grew up underground with sea deities, and became the divine equivalent of a steampunk genius. He built golden robot servants, designed armor for Achilles, and constructed nearly everything on Olympus that didn't sparkle naturally. If a magical object exists, odds are Hephaestus made it, reluctantly, underpaid, or both. He also got married off to Aphrodite, the goddess of beauty, as a peace offering. Spoiler, it didn't work out. She cheated with Ares. Hephaestus caught them in a golden net, one of his finer pieces, and dragged them in front of the gods for a round of cosmic embarrassment. And then he went back to work. Hephaestus wasn't graceful or glamorous, but he was useful, reliable, and surprisingly kind for someone who spent his life building things for people who barely looked at him. And now, speaking of divine dysfunction, let's meet the goddess who caused more heartbreak, war, and chaos just by existing. Aphrodite didn't just arrive, She emerged from the sea on a scallop shell, fully formed and already irresistible. She was the goddess of love, beauty, desire, seduction, and, accidentally, most of the Trojan War. Helen, Paris, the golden apple. Yeah, that's all her fault. Or to be fair, the fault of a divine beauty contest she never asked to be in, but absolutely won. She was married to Hephaestus but preferred Ares, and Adonis, and a few others. Her relationships weren't tidy, but they were passionate. Aphrodite could make gods weak, mortals obsessed, and entire empires fall apart. She was desire in divine form, and desire is not logical. She had a kind side too. She protected lovers, granted fertility, and once helped a statue come to life because the sculptor fell in love with it. But don't confuse beauty with softness. She cursed women to love monsters. She humiliated kings. She held grudges like fine perfume. And unlike Artemis or Athena, she weaponized femininity deliberately, often. Aphrodite reminds us, love is not always gentle. Sometimes it destroys cities. And now we leave Olympus proper. Because beyond the main 12, there's a crowd of divine side characters, misfits, and minor gods. The ones who sneak messages, guard sleep, or casually stir fate while no one's looking. Let's start with the trickiest messenger of them all. Hermes had one job, and 15 side hustles. Messenger of the gods, sure, but also god of travel, trade, luck, thieves, liars, and borderline chaos. If it involved moving fast, bending rules, or skimming a little off the top, Hermes was already there, probably wearing winged sandals and acting innocent. He was born to Maya, a minor goddess, and Zeus, the usual suspect. Within hours of birth, baby Hermes escaped his cradle, stole Apollo's cattle, invented the lyre, and played dumb so well that Apollo forgave him and kept the instrument. He could talk his way into or out of anything. Hermes carried Zeus's messages, guided souls to the underworld, and snuck mortals out of tight spots with a wink and a lie. He was the god of loopholes, sacred trickery, divine delivery, and morally flexible logistics. In a pantheon full of muscle and lightning bolts, Hermes got by on charm, speed, and creative interpretations of rules. He didn't want worship. He wanted results. He was the god you'd hire if you needed something retrieved, smuggled, or diplomatically edited. And now, let's meet the only Olympian who drank more than Hermes and made a religion out of partying. Dionysus is the god of wine. But don't picture a cozy vineyard picnic. Think frenzy, euphoria, a little madness, a lot of grape juice. Born from Zeus's thigh, long story, Dionysus was the last to join the Olympian club. He didn't fit the mold, and he didn't care. He brought wine to the mortals, which made him very popular. But it wasn't just about getting tipsy. Dionysus represented transformation, freedom, and the blurring of lines, gender, sanity, life and death. He traveled the world with his band of wild followers, converting skeptics, making vines grow from stone, and driving doubters completely mad. If you welcomed him, he brought celebration. If you mocked him, you might end up as a dolphin. He was a god of theatre, illusion, costume, and chaos. He made people question who they really were, or at least forget it for the night. And he's the only Olympian who offered his seat to Hestia. So yes, party god, but polite. Let's tone things down for a moment and meet the most baby-faced hazard in mythology. Eros is proof that size means nothing in myth. Small wings, chubby cheeks, literal baby. but this baby can ruin your life. Eros, known later as Cupid, was the god of attraction. One arrow and you're in love. No warning, no logic, just butterflies and doom. He didn't speak much. He didn't have to. His arrows did the talking. Even the gods weren't safe. Apollo fell for Daphne. Hades fell for Persephone. All thanks to Eros and his love darts of chaos. And yet, he wasn't always cruel. In one myth, he fell in love himself with Psyche, immortal. He loved her secretly, then lost her, then got her back after a journey full of trials and jealousy. Which proves that even the god of love isn't immune to heartbreak. He's not malicious, just reckless. Next up, a goddess with even less dialogue, but way more trophies. Nike didn't throw tantrums, she threw victory. She's the goddess of triumph, of speed, strength, and the moment your side wins. She had no scandals, no vendettas, no cursed love stories. She simply existed, wings outstretched, hovering next to champions like a hype woman with a laurel wreath. In art, Nike's always mid-stride, 1 foot lifted, robes flying, sometimes tiny, perched on Zeus's hand, sometimes massive, leading armies into battle, but always with that effortless confidence. She didn't need to fight. She was the win. In modern times, her name is on sneakers, but in myth, she's the quiet final word in any contest, the part where the crowd goes wild. Let's follow her trail of glitter and wings to another airborne Olympian. If Hermes was chaos, Iris was clarity. She was the rainbow in divine email. Iris was the messenger for Hera, and a speedrunner in every sense. She darted between realms, carrying news, blessings, and the occasional angry goddess decree. Unlike Hermes, she didn't lie. She just delivered. Born of sea and sky, Iris was graceful, loyal, and didn't need drama to be respected. She showed up, got it done, and vanished on a beam of light. While gods quarreled, Iris shimmered across the world like a divine courier on rollerblades. And now, let's leave the skies and step into the forest. Our next god has hooves, a flute, and boundary issues. Pan was not built for polite company. He had goat legs, wild eyes, and a talent for causing panic. Literally, his name gave us the word. Pan was the god of shepherds, forests, rustic music, and being way too comfortable with nature. He chased nymphs, played creepy tunes on his pan flute, and napped in the sun like he owned the wilderness. He didn't live on Olympus. He preferred the untamed hills where echoes answered back and shadows moved strangely. Pan was ancient, primal, and unpredictable. He made people uneasy. The silence before a storm, or the chill you feel walking alone in the woods. And yet, he wasn't evil, just honest, wild, a reminder that not everything sacred is beautiful. Let's dry off, calm down, and refill our goblet, because our next goddess is more refined, and possibly hired through family connections. If Olympus had an unpaid internship program, Hebe would be its poster child. She's the goddess of youth, which sounds glamorous, but mostly she spent eternity pouring drinks for her parents, Zeus and Hera, and their immortal friends. Cupbearer wasn't just a job, it was her job. She didn't lead armies, start wars, or curse mortals. She just kept everyone's divine wine topped up. But Hebe did eventually get a promotion, or at least a better title. She married Heracles after his mortal drama ended, and he ascended to Olympus, which sounds like a reward, unless you remember, he once snapped and destroyed his entire family. Hebe represents eternal youth, Not the fun kind, but the immortal stasis kind. No aging, no wrinkles, no escape from parental micromanagement. Just a forever 20-something with glowing skin and refill duties. And yet, in a pantheon of over-the-top egos, Hebe stayed quiet, helpful, and mysteriously underemployed. Sometimes that's the real divine power. Now, speaking of immortality, let's meet the god who ends it. Gently. Thanatos doesn't have a scythe. That's Hades' branding problem. Or the Grim Reapers. Thanatos is the Greek god of death, and he's surprisingly low drama. Quiet robe, no theatrics. Just a firm handshake and your final paperwork. He's not evil. He's not cruel. He's just inevitable. Thanatos was often portrayed with wings, gently carrying away souls when their time was up. If Hades is the CEO of the afterlife, Thanatos is the guy showing up with a clipboard and saying, "It's time." He's also famously bad at holding on to people. Heracles wrestled him. Sisyphus tricked him. Even mortals occasionally delayed him with enough cleverness or prayers. But when Thanatos does win, he's quick, painless, professional. He's the kind of death you'd actually want. The kind that slips in silently and doesn't bring fire or drama. Just peace. Until, of course, you've messed with the wrong goddess. Then you meet. Nemesis is the universe's I told you so, with wings. She's not chaos, she's correction. The goddess of retribution, balance, and cosmic karma. If you've ever seen someone get exactly what they deserve, too late to stop it. That was Nemesis. She walks softly, but she carries receipts. Nemesis punished hubris, that fatal flaw of thinking you're better than the gods. She didn't need a thunderbolt or a snake, just time, a quiet smile, and consequences. Think of her as the divine counterweight to Tyche, the goddess of luck. When Tyche hands out jackpots, Nemesis is the one muttering, "Let's see how you handle that." She didn't act out of anger. She acted because the scales were off. In modern terms, Nemesis is less of a villain and more of a plot twist. The twist that reminds everyone, the gods are watching and the universe will collect. And if you're wondering who decides whether you get fortune or Nemesis, that brings us to her coin-flipping counterpart. Tyche is luck, pure, unpredictable, and often inconvenient. She might bless you with wealth, power, or perfect parking, or she might trip you on the way to your wedding. She doesn't explain. She doesn't apologize. She spins the wheel and walks away. Tyche ruled over cities, sometimes as a protector, sometimes as an unpredictable wildcard. Statues of her showed her holding a cornucopia in one hand and a rudder in the other, because luck feeds you and steers you, right into a wall if it wants. Some viewed her as kind, others as reckless, but all agreed. Tyche made kings and beggars with the same shrug. And if she ever seemed unfair, that's when Nemesis stepped in with a reality check. But long before Tyche, Nemesis, and even Zeus, there was something stranger, simpler, and far, far older. Let's float backward now, past the Titans, past the Olympians, into the original void itself. In the beginning, there was chaos. And no, not the screaming, panicking kind, more like the abstract, swirling nothingness kind. Chaos wasn't a being so much as a state of existence, a yawning, formless void. Not dark, not light, just not. Out of chaos came everything, literally. The first primordial beings were born from this formless soup. Gaia, Earth, Tartarus, the deep underworld, Nyx, night, Erebus, darkness, and even Eros, desire. So technically, Everything from golden apples to petty god fights can be traced back to this one cosmic shrug. Chaos doesn't get temples, no statues, no sacrifices, because you can't really worship a blank page, but its presence is still everywhere. In the unknown, the unpredictable, the vastness between stars. It's the original source code, and it hasn't been debugged since. If the gods are characters, chaos is the stage. It doesn't interfere. It doesn't care. It just is. And honestly, in a mythology full of jealous lightning throwers and grudge-holding sea gods, that's kind of refreshing. But once chaos started generating other beings, things took shape quickly. The void cracked, earth settled, and suddenly, there were rules. Sort of. Let's meet the first one to walk out of that cosmic fog and plant her feet. Gaia didn't just appear. She happened. Born from chaos, she was the earth itself. Not a goddess who ruled it. Not someone with a chariot or a flaming sword. She was dirt, mountains, valleys. That oddly specific hill you tripped on last spring. She's the reason anything physical exists at all. Gaia is the mother of everything, and not in a vague spiritual sense. She gave birth to Uranus, the sky, the mountains, the sea, and then later married her own son. Greek mythology doesn't do family boundaries. Her relationship with Uranus? Not great. He covered her in sky and wouldn't let their children, the Titans, leave her womb. So Gaia, being a loving mother and a patient grudge holder, forged a flint sickle and asked her son Kronos to handle the situation with a slice. From her spilled blood came more creatures, furies, giants, and other delightful chaos. Gaia doesn't play favorites. She births both saviors and monsters. If it grows, erupts, or yells, she probably had a hand in it. Even when the Olympian gods rose up, Gaia didn't vanish. She just stayed. The ground you walk on, the fault lines that shift when gods get moody. In myth, she's eternal background power, not flashy, not loud, but always watching. And sometimes, judging. And speaking of judging, let's talk about her sky husband-son combo. The first in a long line of celestial control freaks. If the sky ever felt emotionally distant, it's probably because of Uranus. Born from Gaia, and then, with Gaia, Uranus was the first sky god. But unlike Zeus, who yells and throws lightning, Uranus was more of a looming silence, cold, controlling. All vastness, no cuddles. He didn't like his kids, especially the big, weird ones. Cyclopes with single eyes, Hecatoncheires with 100 hands. Too monstrous for his cosmic aesthetic. So he stuffed them back inside Gaia, which, understandably, she didn't appreciate. Cue Kronos. With Gaia's help, Kronos ambushed Uranus, sickle in hand, and did some celestial pruning. The sky bled stars, and from the remains came the goddess of love, Aphrodite, depending on the version. So at least something nice came out of it. Uranus represents that first layer of patriarchal control in the myth cycle. He hoarded power, feared change, got sliced by the next generation. It's a pattern we'll see again and again. After the snipping incident, Uranus kind of vanishes. He doesn't storm back. No revenge arcs, just quiet sky again. A reminder that in myth, even gods can fade. But the drama he kicked off, that was just getting started. Nyx was night, not a goddess of night. She was night, a primordial force wrapped in shadow and mystery. Nyx didn't rule darkness. She birthed it. She emerged directly from chaos and immediately started parenting a lineup that could headline any horror anthology. Thanatos, death. Hypnos, sleep. Eris, strife. Moros, doom. Nemesis, revenge. She basically populated the underworld before Hades had a chair there. Even Zeus, who usually has no chill, feared Nyx. When Hypnos once made Zeus nap a little too long, the god chased him in a rage. But Hypnos ran to Mom. Zeus backed off, fast. Nyx wasn't evil, just untouchable. She didn't live on Olympus. She didn't throw parties or wars. She glided through the cosmos like a velvet cloak, silently birthing consequences and cosmic weirdos. In art, she's often shown with stars in her hair, trailing silence, with a gaze that says, "I saw what you did, and I'm not impressed." Worship of Nyx was rare, not because she was forgotten, but because people feared invoking her name. The night is sacred, but it also doesn't forgive. And somewhere in that eternal silence, time began ticking. Kronos. Not to be confused with Kronos the Titan, we'll get to him. Kronos is the personification of time itself. He isn't the father of Zeus or the guy who ate his kids. Kronos is older, stranger, less myth, more concept. If you've ever stared at a clock and felt it stare back, that's Kronos. He's often imagined as a robed figure, sometimes winged, endlessly turning the wheel of time. Some versions have him creating the cosmic egg from which the universe hatched. Others pair him with Ananke, necessity, winding the universe like a great clock that never stops ticking. Kronos doesn't get involved in drama. He doesn't punish or bless. He just moves. Everything ages. Everything ends. He's patient, impartial, and deeply, deeply inevitable. Greek mythology sometimes blends Kronos with Chronos. Thanks, similar names. But they're different. Kronos is abstract. Kronos is parental. One is time itself. The other is a god trying to own it. And that brings us neatly to the next figure. He's not just time. He's a titan. And he did try to control it. But now, let's move on to the other one. Kronos with a K, the titan who didn't just embody time, but decided to control it by swallowing his kids, shall we? Kronos was the kind of dad who hears, "Your child will overthrow you," and responds with cannibalism. He was the youngest of the first titans, born of Gaia and Uranus. When Uranus turned into a controlling sky blanket, Kronos sliced him up with a sickle provided by his mom. That act made him king of the cosmos, for a while. Kronos married his sister Rhea, as was custom in mythology, and together they had kids, Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, Poseidon, and eventually Zeus. But Kronos had a prophecy problem. Just like he overthrew his father, one of his children would overthrow him. So, logically, he swallowed each baby whole. Rhea got tired of this parenting method. She smuggled baby Zeus to a cave, handed Kronos a rock in a blanket, and he ate it. Zeus grew up, came back, and forced his dad to vomit up his siblings, fully grown, because Greek biology is a vibe. Then they all overthrew Kronos in the Titanomachy. Afterward, Kronos was either imprisoned in Tartarus, ruling over the Elysian fields, or just vibing in retirement depending on the version. Kronos represents time you can't escape, the devouring kind, the inevitable passing of power. He tried to control fate, and fate laughed. But Rhea, she made fate blink first. Rhea had one job: birth divine children. And by all accounts, she did it well. But the moment she realized her husband Kronos was treating their newborns like finger food, she switched roles, from mother to mythological trickster. With 5 of her babies already swallowed by Kronos, she gave birth to the 6th, Zeus, in secret. She hid him in a cave on the island of Crete and handed Kronos a rock wrapped in a blanket instead. Kronos, in classic Titan fashion, didn't check. She raised Zeus in silence, waited patiently, and when the time was right, helped him bring his siblings back into the world and bring her husband's reign to an end. Rhea is one of the quieter Titans. She doesn't start wars or throw lightning, but her legacy is colossal. Without her rebellion, there would be no Olympians, no mythology as we know it. She's associated with fertility, mountains, lions, and the wildness of maternal strength. Often shown riding a chariot pulled by lions, she's not just a mother. She's a force of nature with a patient stare and excellent long-term planning skills. Now let's pivot from family drama to something a little more aquatic. Oceanus is the god of all waters. Not just the oceans, but the idea of a world-encompassing river that flows around the Earth's edge like a divine moat. He's one of the original Titans, married to Tethys, and together they had thousands of children, the river gods and ocean nymphs. Oceanus didn't take sides in the great Titan versus Olympian war, which is probably why he didn't end up in Tartarus like the rest of his brothers. Unlike Poseidon, Oceanus isn't known for temper tantrums or earthquake stunts. He doesn't stir storms or flood cities. He just flows, constantly, silently, eternally. In some depictions, he has horns and a tail, like a bullfish hybrid, symbolizing untamed, endless currents. But he's more cosmic boundary than personality. The Greeks imagined the world as a flat disk, with Oceanus circling the rim. A river too wide to cross and too vast to anger. He's the kind of Titan who minds his business, lets the Olympians squabble, and quietly supports all life on Earth. Not bad for a guy who literally never makes a splash. Speaking of world shapers, let's meet one of Oceanus's less chill brothers. If Oceanus represents flow, Iapetus represents the ticking clock on your lifespan. Iapetus is the Titan of mortality, and father to some of mythology's most famous overachievers and troublemakers. Prometheus, the fire-giver, Epimetheus, the oops-maker, Atlas, the earth-holder, and Menoetius, the smited one. While he doesn't star in many myths himself, Iapetus's legacy is all about consequences. His sons represent forethought, hindsight, burden, and hubris. Basically, the 4 stages of every Greek tragedy. Iapetus fought on the side of the Titans in the Great War against the Olympians and, like many of his brothers, ended up banished to Tartarus. His defeat symbolizes the fall of the old cosmic order, a shift from inevitability and fate to free will and chaos, which, ironically, his own kids helped usher in. In art, he's barely shown. In text, he's more concept than character, but his shadow lingers. Every time a human struggles with mortality, wrestles with legacy, or yells, "I should have known better," Iapetus is smirking from the void. But not all Titans dealt in gloom and endings. Some offered gifts, like memory. Before there were scrolls, books, or Wikipedia, there was Mnemosyne, goddess of memory. One of the Titan daughters of Gaia and Uranus. Mnemosyne isn't loud or wrathful. She doesn't start wars or end eras. Instead, she gives humanity the ability to remember. Everything from songs and stories to the lessons burned into history by fire and loss. She's also the mother of the 9 muses. And how did that happen? Zeus slept with her for 9 nights straight. Not out of passion. This was more of a divine brainstorm session. From that mythic week came the muses, each one inspiring a different art or science. Mnemosyne represents the past as living knowledge. In some ancient mystery traditions, she guarded a pool in the underworld. Souls who drank from Lethe forgot everything. Souls who drank from her pool remembered who they were. So in a mythology packed with forgetful heroes, cursed kings, and endless repetition, Mnemosyne stands apart. She helps you learn, if you listen. You've met gods of sky and shadow, of war, wine, chaos, and calm, titans who shaped the earth, Olympians who reshaped it again, and divine oddballs who snuck in through the cracks. Some still reign. Others faded with time. A few got tangled in their own myths and never quite escaped. But their names linger in planets, poems, weather reports, and awkward family metaphors. Greek mythology wasn't built for comfort. It was built to explain why life feels like this. Messy, glorious, unfair, beautiful. Full of grudges, laughter, and lightning strikes that were probably personal. And yet, for all their power, these gods were just exaggerated reflections of us, of fear and desire, of memory and invention, of what we hoped our stories might outlive. So wherever you're listening from, your couch, your bed, the night shift, or some cozy corner of the world, and whatever time it is there, thank you for spending this quiet hour wandering Olympus with me. May your dreams be free of riddles, winged sandals, and unsolicited quests. And if you hear thunder tonight, maybe just roll over and go back to sleep. Good night.